All right. Hello to everyone joining.
Hi, Jordan. How you doing? You had a busy day, huh?
How are you?
Good, buddy.
Good. All
Kicking
right.
ass in the OR?
Yes, it was a long one, longer than anticipated, but
Oh, man.
yeah.
Reconstructive, huh?
Yeah, a bilateral breast reconstruction with free flap. So, but
Wow. Hats off to you, my friend.
doing well.
Yes.
Well, I think there's still some people trickling in, as I'm sure there will be for a little bit, but we'll go ahead and get started. All right, yeah. So thank you everyone for joining. As you know, I'm Jordan Fry from the Prudent Plastic Surgeon. I'm really excited to be here with Sendhil Krishnan, who we crossed paths probably a few months ago, kind of, in talking about how we invest in real estate. And he has just a really cool niche that I think was really interesting and that I've through him learned a lot about. And so I invited him to share a little bit more about it as well. But as some background, he's a cardiologist and interventionist in Orange County, California. He's invested in real estate a lot of different ways. But after doing a bunch, he co-founded MD Senior Living, which owns and operates a bunch of like over a dozen residential assisted living facilities, and has really set like a new benchmark for raising the standard of assisted living group homes. Like all the time, Cindy will be texting me like, "Oh, we just won this award or that," and it's really cool. So
That's a brag or anything.
yeah. No, I think it's pretty awesome. Like I mean, it's really cool. So he's then in turn shared with others how to get involved, learn to operate their own residential assisted living homes. And it's really a lucrative investment niche with high cash flows. And it's a way that you can kind of, I guess, leverage your medical expertise and serve a really beneficial purpose as well of, helping seniors to live a healthy life. So it's really cool. And kind of to put in perspective, and he'll talk a little bit about this, but like just about one of these, assisted living homes can generate as much cash flow almost as like what my entire portfolio does already. And you'll see there's certainly work that goes into it, like any sort of investing, but it's really, like I said, an interesting niche that I think could be really beneficial. I've since taken his course and learned a lot about it. Basically, like, from knowing nothing about it to being able to do it on my own. So that's a very long-winded introduction, but I'm really excited to have you here and sharing some of the exciting stuff you've been doing. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know you got a busy schedule. I appreciate all you guys joining us too. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to jump in. Jordan, can I just share my screen or
Yes,
thing?
you should be able to.
Okay, perfect. Do
There
you
you
guys
go.
see this okay?
Yes.
But as background, yes, I do cardiology. I still practice. I'm actually on STEMI call tonight, so hopefully I don't get called, but I do have backup in case. But I love what I do now. It's been a game changer doing something that you actually love. But a lot of you might be experiencing burnout or wondering how are you going to continue doing the same thing over and over time. But you got to do something, or you got to find ways to explore more. And obviously, real estate is a game changer in many different ways. It doesn't matter. I'm not just talking about RALs, but for me, I found my niche in RALs. As I said, as Jordan mentioned, I did a lot of different investings, but ultimately I decided on assisted living. But that doesn't mean I don't do other stuff. I still keep my hands wet in doing syndications or flips or whatever it might be. But really what this has allowed me from having assisted living homes is just the freedom to not worry about trying to make ends meet with medicine. I live in a high cost of living environment. Competitive. There's so many cardiologists here, and they're all just very cutthroat, to be honest. So I didn't want to. I couldn't see myself being in that environment. So I wanted to try to do something. So I started my own practice just a couple of years ago. It's slowly grown, but it's not doing as much as, say, another interventionalist working for a group. But I am happy with what I do because I have so much flexibility in time, because I don't worry about the financial aspect, because that's coming in from my side projects. And really the goals of this webinar, I just have really basically two goals that I wanted, and I do want to dive into it and kind of give you guys as much information as possible that I can. So feel free to write down questions or ask questions, or if you guys want to put it in the chat box, and then we can discuss it after every couple of slides or segments. But really just understanding why you should really just get into assisted living and what that outlook looks like, not just for the next couple of years, but for decades to come. And I want you to understand that you can do this too. When I started, I was going to be happy doing just 1 or 2 homes. And I thought, hey, you know what, this is just going to be another asset class that I'm just diversifying into. But little did I know that just 5 years later, we would have 12 homes, and we're still growing and expanding in so many different areas. And ultimately, what this is really going to help you do is build your own financial independence. And beyond that, build a legacy, right? You can take these care homes and pass it on to your children and have them have this as a passive investment opportunity. So I have an 8-year-old, I can't wait for him to start, during his summers when he's a little bit older, I'm going to make him work over there. I'm going to put him to work as a caregiver in these homes so that he can understand work ethics and understand compassion and understand what it's like to work with seniors. And hopefully he'll develop a love and an attachment the same way that I grew. So, at the end of this webinar, I hope that you'll kind of understand that you can start your own home. You can do it within a couple of months. Now we're going to talk about, I do want to talk, because this environment, this economic environment is very, I would say very wishy-washy, what do you do? So we can talk about that. But if you do have a couple of these homes, you can achieve financial freedom within 5 years. And that'll allow you to practice medicine the way you want to practice, not how you're being forced to practice, if that's an issue for you. And really, ultimately, why should you even open your own assisted living home? And RAL, we'll just use that term. It's residential assisted living. There's different terms for it: group home, care home. These are all terms for it. But the proper terminology in a lot of states is residential assisted living. But it's a high cash flowing business. Owning the real estate with business has numerous advantages. The competition is not as bad, and it's actually much lower than a lot of niches. Nowadays, you try to do an Airbnb, you're competing against Joe Schmo and every other neighbor that's doing one of these. But assisted living sets a higher benchmark. There's more hurdles. So I'm going to teach you how to get over those hurdles. But that's good. You want those hurdles because it keeps out a lot of the competition from entering this space. There's a lot of different ways to grow and expand laterally in this space. You can do independent living. You can expand into home health. You can leverage your medical experience. I don't care what kind of physician you are. There's a way that you can help your seniors in these homes. And really, ultimately, you can, once you learn how to do the first one, I'm going to tell you, it's not that hard to grow and develop after that. You will realize it's the same steps that we use over and over. And these are kind of the steps that I'm going to kind of teach you. And I want you guys to take a couple of notes on action items as I talk, because you can do some of these things tomorrow and kind of get going on your own home in your own communities. But ultimately, I can't tell you just how gratifying this is to walk into, an assisted living home and see caregivers and residents being taken care of. It's just an amazing feeling to see, what you grow. It's so much more different than doing, say, a flip or just having a single family home. You walk into these homes and you realize that you're actually changing the lives of these residents. You're changing the lives for these family members that they're looking at you to take care of their family members for. So what do you need to learn? There's essentially 5 things, which is really what this webinar is kind of going to be focused on, which is the opportunities, the real estate side, the operational side. Now, this is a huge one because I don't want you guys to create this as extra work, right? We're trying to do this as a passive income. I live in Southern California. All my homes are in Arizona. I'm not out there every day. I'm definitely not on the phone with my operational team. You know, my purpose has turned to more like vision and growth and strategy and building it out. But it's not day-to-day stuff. And that's what I'm trying to impart to you guys, that you don't want to be doing that. So building the right team is extremely important. You can use your medical expertise, blow out the competition. A lot of these homes are really just run by mom and pop operators. Over 85% of these homes are simply people with little to no medical or even like college degrees. So a lot of it is just, you know, people that live in the homes and run these homes, and you know, they do a great job, but they don't have opportunities that you and I have as medical professionals to really leverage that expertise. And then finally, I'll teach you some growth strategies, which you can actually grow without even having to put much more capital into your second or third homes. So my background, as Jordan said, I am a physician out here, and really, I just noticed early on that I was just getting burnt out with just the same rat race that I was experiencing. You know, I was supposed to be a partner, and I thought that would make me happy. And then when I was finally offered that, I just realized, like, you know, this is not what I wanted. So I started doing all sorts of different real estate projects. I started buying like single family homes, like Tic Tacs, like a couple of years ago. Just, I was like, oh my God, you can get a house for 15%. Like, so at one point I had like 15 or 16 of these homes spread throughout the Midwest. They're touted as turnkeys, but ultimately you get a maintenance headache, you get tenant calls, you get all these issues that come through. And then what I realized was, like, every time you get a maintenance issue, it would wipe out the cash flow for the entire month. So I started then switching over to say, okay, well, what about Airbnbs? You know, this created a whole separate headache, and it was really headaches for the neighbors with people partying and throwing all sorts of stuff. You know, it's just maintenance headache after headache with these homes. So then I was like, well, you know, I don't want to deal with tenants. So I started going into flips and new construction. And this is, I'll be honest, a lot of these projects did really good, had great returns. But there's always a downside. And the downside is, you know, this was a project I completed out here, phenomenal return. I right now have a couple of flips going on. This home right here is in Orange County. I can't get rid of it because the market has turned. My numbers don't make sense now. So even today, I just had a buyer under contract and they just pulled out. So this is the kind of headache, this ups and downs that you'll find, or at least was my experience. You know, and I never got consistent results. You know, I learned a lot about real estate from all of this, but a lot of these investment classes just created headaches. And what I was really looking for was more of a stable, like, return that you could count on month after month by having a stable investment class. So this is really how I got into assisted living, ultimately founded MD Senior Living. We started with one home. So I got my first house for assisted living in 2017. This was the house. It was just a single family house. It took me nearly 2 years to figure out how to get this turned into a care home, right? But after that, you know, I met a partner. He had his own home. It took him about 2 years too, but we both joined forces, created MD Senior Living. And then the following year, you know, understanding that process and realizing we were able to get 2 homes. The following year after that, we got 3. And then we grew and grew. Ultimately, you know, we have a portfolio of 12. And right now we're closing on these 3 homes as we speak. So, you know, to us, the economy, it doesn't matter. We look at this as a very recession resilient investment class. So we're constantly looking for deals, you know, and we can, like I said, you know, we'll talk about when is the right time to invest and whether that makes sense to do it at this moment or not. But, you know, we're doing it ourselves. You know, I'm not here to tell you something that I'm not going to do, but we're about to close on these homes next week as we speak. These are already turnkey. They're running as assisted living homes. Some of the other homes we purchased as, you know, from scratch, we got it renovated. And that's the process that I want to teach you is, hey, if you want to do this from scratch, what are the processes that you need to do that? We won numerous awards. You know, this past year, we were named top 10, one of the top 10 elder care services company in the nation. So we're really excited for all these awards. But let's enough of all that, but let's go back to like, okay, the point of this webinar. So what is an assisted living home? What's a residential assisted living? It's nothing fancy, okay? It's just a home that's been converted into so it's to be made senior safe. So you can think of ADA compliance or things like that, right? It's residents that have levels of care that are being taken care of by 24/7 by caregivers. So all their care, so this is non-medical stuff. This is just like, hey, I need help brushing my teeth or feeding or bathing or cooking or stuff like that. Your average resident is going to be in their 80s and 90s. And really, they have outgrown not just their homes, but have actually outgrown a larger assisted living facilities. Larger assisted living facilities are really geared for people that are more mobile, can walk to the bathroom or can wait for that help. These residents, they need more personalized care and more attention. So our staff to caregiver to resident ratios is much smaller than it is in assisted living facilities, right? So that's the appeal for having RALs as opposed to a larger assisted living facilities. If you're close to an ALF, they are not your competition. I'm going to tell you, they're actually going to be a referral source for you as these residents outgrow RALs. And Jordan, feel free to jump in anytime if you want me to stop or answer any questions or anything like that.
No, this is fantastic.
Yeah, so as I said, it's really just simple things. These are not considered medical facilities. So we're actually not billing Medicare, all right? A lot of our residents are just private pay. And where do they get that money? A lot of times it's from the homes that they sell that they're no longer using, right? They're not going to be using their cars. They're not going to be going on vacation. They have a nest egg that's saved up, or their children might pitch in to help. So that's where this private pay money is coming. For those that can't afford it, there are waiver programs. It's called assisted living waiver programs. Most states have it where they can give some kind of assistance, and typically it's about $2,500 to $3,000 if they need that or if they qualify for that. So let's talk about, why is there a big need for this? I keep harping on this, but there's a huge need because the 65 plus population is going to be the largest demographic in the US. And they're actually going to outnumber all the other age groups, within 10 years. There's 10,000 people that turn 65 every day. The baby boomer population that we're focusing on is not going to turn 80. Like the oldest baby boomer is going to turn 80 in about 2026. And after that, it's just going to be numerous. There's going to be 77 million behind them, assuming the ones that need care or the ones that survive, right? So into their 80s and 90s, you're just going to have wave after wave. And numbers show that there's already almost 1 million senior housing units that are short. Okay, and I'm not just talking about assisted living, I'm talking across the spectrum. I'm talking about independent living, I'm talking about skilled nursing facilities. So when we look at senior living, it's actually a huge spectrum. So, our niche is assisted living. But if you wanted to expand, you could say, okay, well, let me look into independent living. Let me look into senior apartments. What about memory care? What about offering hospice? So there's many, many different ways that you can get into this. We chose assisted living because it's a great balance. You can have residents that transition from more of an independent into assisted. You can convert certain homes into memory care and specialize it for that. You can offer hospice services within your homes. You can offer, home health, like whatever it may be, right? You can expand upon this. But our niche has always been assisted living, but we're also looking to expand beyond that, And the rents are growing. Assisted living, no matter what, year over year, the rates have grown. I mean, the average home across the nation is about $5,800. Now, if you're putting your parents in an average home, I'm going to tell you, you don't like your parents, okay? That's the bottom line. If you go into an average home and they're charging $5,800, it's unfortunate, but you're not going to get top quality food. You're not going to get the high personalization of care. You may not get big spaces and all that, but that's the bottom line. And this is one of the homes that we're acquiring, and this is their actual rent roll that I copied and pasted. It's a few months old, but it's pretty accurate in terms of what they're generating on a monthly basis. So you can see there where even some of the residents moved in. Typically, these residents, the average length of stay is about 2.5 years. Either their needs will progress beyond assisted living into skilled nursing, or they'll end up passing, and a majority end up passing within these homes. So, but you can see what the rates are there and the average totals there. Even my first home, I had a lot of doubt that I was going to be able to generate these kind of numbers. I was projecting 4,500. I took a huge leap of faith when I did this home, because I was doing it in California, full-time cardiology, trying to get this home off the ground. It was just a single family home. It was 4 bedrooms, I think. And I ended up adding 6 bedrooms. I ended up adding like 6 bathrooms or 7 bathrooms at that. But you can see these numbers here where, we're talking about overhead percentage when you subtract out the operational overhead. And right now with inflation, it's been higher. It normally used to be about 60%. I would say right now, when you run your numbers, use 70% just to be safe, right? So the net operating income on a monthly basis is about $22K. When you subtract out the mortgage, remember this was just a residential home when I first got it. I still kept that mortgage. It's about $5,500 a month. Still, it cash flows a decent amount, 150 to 200,000. How many of these homes do you need to be financially independent is the question, right? It doesn't take that many. Now, that was a big project, so don't get scared of these numbers, right? But you can do something smaller. And the following 2 homes that we did were both 5 bedrooms. And the down payment and renovation was about 155. And it generates almost about 80K annually. So what that means is within 2 years, you can take out all the money that you already put in there. And what you're left with is something called infinite cash on cash return, because you actually have none of your cash in there. You've been able to take it out. And generally, you got this property that's just basically cash flowing for you. And all you have is the operational expenses and the debt service on it. It doesn't take long to pay off the mortgage on these homes. I did some calculations on this very first home. If I was to use the cash flow to pay this off, it would take less than 8 years to have a completely free property, that we own outright, if we chose to do that. So let's talk about action plan, all right? So tomorrow, what I want you guys to do, right, if you're very interested in this, just contact some local assisted living homes and assisted living facilities to understand what the room rates are in your area, right? Find a nice area and find something that's, maybe not so nice, or, not nice, but like, average. And just compare and contrast and see what you're getting, right? You have to do a little bit of sleuthing on this. And the way you do it is, I used to do this all the time. I've probably visited over 100 of these group homes just to understand what the market was like, what occupancy was like, and what they were doing for staff and caregiver ratios, and what amenities, what they were offering. So, when you have time, go and visit these homes. Just say, hey, listen, I'm shopping for my grandma. She needs this level of care, or whatever it may be, and just get an idea for yourself what these things are. Another way to do it is to go to the site. It's called genwork.com/cost of care. Type in your zip code or area, and you can actually, and it'll pull up like the median cost, not just for assisted living. Here in LA, again, it's 5,200, but you can also see what skilled nursing costs, or what, if someone were to come to the house and help out, what those costs are. Remember, 5,200 is very average. I would say it's like a 2.5 to a 3 star. You're not going to be putting your patients there, or your family members there, but average might be $7,000-8,000 in LA, right? So when you have an idea of, let's say you have an idea of, okay, well, I want to do it in this part of town, or I want to focus on this area, or what does my own neighborhood look like? What you're going to do is then look at the real estate aspect to see if you can actually convert it into assisted living. Let's say you actually live in the perfect house, right? Let's say you have a house and you're thinking, hey, well, maybe I can turn this into assisted living. What would you do? So what you would do is there's a couple of different ways that you can get into this business. I'm going to skip this for now. But really, what you do is you call the zoning, regional planning or zoning department. The first thing you're going to ask them is, hey, I'm looking at this area or this area. I want to know if it's zoned for assisted living. They may tell you, well, no, it's actually commercial, or it has an R1 rating or an R2, or yes, it's available for assisted living. Now, most residential areas, they can't like deny assisted living. It's actually a HUD rule. It's like fair housing, because it would be discriminatory against seniors to say, no, you can't do assisted living. So most times they will tell you that it is permissible. But what you need to know is you want to maximize your revenue, and you maximize it by having the biggest number of licenses that you can. So in California, RCFEs, they're called RCFEs out here, residential care facilities for the elderly. And in Washington, I believe it's about 6 residents. Now you can get something called a conditional use permit or a variance, where you can try to get a license for say 10 residents. If you have a big enough property, you can get extra licensing for additional people. To do that, you ask about those conditional use permits, but you then need to also follow up with the building and safety division. Okay, so this is another division at the city you're going to call, because you want to find out, hey, what's the maximum number of residents that I can put? What are the fire codes? What are the building codes that I need to be aware of? Now they may say, hey, listen, the max you can put is 10. Well, that's perfect. So now you know, now you can start running some numbers and thinking, well, okay, I have a house. It's got 7 bedrooms. Maybe some of them can be shared. Some of them can be private. This is the numbers that I'm getting based on local RALs in the area. And this is what they're charging for shared or private. And you can start to run your numbers that way and get a good sense of like, hey, is this profitable? Does this make sense for me to do? Now, the building safety division might say, hey, listen, you can go above 6, but if you do that, you need to add certain things. So, you know, even in Arizona, if we go above 5 residents, we then need to install a fire sprinkler safety system. You can go above 10, but if you do that, then you need a commercial kitchen. You actually need a commercial hood. You need like certain, you know, you got to have certain things throughout your kitchen that just to allow for those extra residents, you know. So there's different things that they'll teach you about, okay? But you can at least get a sense of, okay, what do I need to do, or what's the max that I can have in such an area? And then you start shopping for a house, right? Generally, single story ranch style is most ideal. It's not like you can't, and the house that you see there is one of our houses. It's actually 2-story, but the second story is really just for caregivers that live in. We want to have large common areas, because a lot of the day of assisted living is spent fostering activities together. We don't want our residents laying in bed or just hanging out there by themselves. We want them to be socially interacting with one another, with the caregivers, playing games, doing activities, because we want them to do that. You know, you want to look for spaces where you can add additional bedrooms. You always want to try to maximize the bedroom count to the max bed licensing capacity, okay? You want to try to have extra bedrooms where a caregiver can actually reside. This will tremendously reduce your costs, because essentially when a caregiver lives there, you can include room and board as part of their compensation, right? Some of the caregivers are going to be on an hourly basis or salary or whatever, but if you have one that lives in or stays overnight and lives there, you can cut a lot of your costs out. And this is one of the ways to, especially in this labor environment, you know, assisted living got hit with the same things that a lot of other industries in terms of high labor costs. So we always try to find creative ways in which to do this. And one of those ways is just having an extra room for caregivers to live in. HOAs are hard communities because they don't like to have a business. To be honest, it's I don't think it's fair. You know, these residents are probably some of the best residents to have. You know, it's lights out by 8. There's no partying. There's no loud noises. I mean, you know, they're very friendly homes and communities. There's fun stuff going on. So whenever you can, try to avoid an HOA community unless they're very friendly towards that. And then finally, if you find a perfect home that you think is good enough or big enough, I would highly recommend making friends with local GCs or architects and having them walk the property with you. And what their goal is to figure out, hey, where can we add an extra bedroom, or what can we do? What walls can we take down and build back up to try to maximize this bed licensing capacity? Or what can we do to make our spaces more interactive? Or what do we need to do for to make it more wheelchair compliant, right? These houses don't need to be ADA compliant, but you want to generally make it so that it's wheelchair compliant, because residents will be in there coming in wheelchairs and whatnot. This was my first home, when I got it, nothing was really, it was a beautiful property, but there was a garage side that had an RV car garage and 2-car garage. And the reason I chose that is because all of that was extra spaces where I could modify and turn into bedrooms. And these were some of the things that I did, but really these are what are common renovations. You want to widen doors to accommodate wheelchairs. And most doors are acceptable. They're about 36 inches, which is fine. You want to make sure the hallways are wide enough though. Simple ramps, fire sprinkler system if your codes require. You want to have grab bars in the bathrooms or in the hallways or wherever they're going to be ambulating. And there's a lot of little miscellaneous stuff, but it's honestly not big things. Okay, we're not talking about a full-scale renovations. These are simple things that any good GC can do or take care of, taking out a bathtub and making a walk-in shower, right? So these are little things that need to be done. So we're not talking about huge things that need to be done, right? So and this is how my Valencia home kind of turned out. I ended up adding, 6 bedrooms in there. I ended up adding 7 bathrooms in there. And it's one of our, it's my baby. I love this property, but in retrospect, if I had to start from scratch, I would have just bought a home that was running as an assisted living home. So I went through all that to kind of show you what that process looks like of buying and vetting and understanding assisted living. But the other simpler way is really just to buy a home that's operating as an assisted living. Now, that may not be true in your case all the time. In Scottsdale, we find numerous deals. This is like ground zero for assisted living homes, so they're buying and selling all the time. But if you don't have that opportunity to buy one that's already running, then you at least know some of the steps on how to get started with your own, right? And just to show you, for transparency's sake, for my first home, 25% down, so about 200 in renovations, 200 for down, and then operating capital. This was a big project. I don't want you guys to get scared about that, right? But remember, what is the cash flow? It makes about 200K a year now, 150 to 200. It doesn't take that. Essentially everything that I put into it has come back out. It's not just me, but it was a couple of partners. So we were able to take out our money. And not only that, the great thing is once you have this, you can refinance, pull out more capital than you actually put in and utilize that to buy other homes, right? And I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. But anyway, the total project cost is $1 million, but really a lot of that, it just includes the debt financing. So I'll take a break right there. Do you guys have any questions on any of that so far? Jordan, is there anything in the chat?
Nothing on the chat. I think we're all just taking it in. I think it's really good, and I think we can move on, and then at the end we'll kind of have an open Q&A. I know I have a few locked and loaded.
Like that. All right. Step 3, operations team. I can't tell you how important this is, and this is one of these lessons that I learned when I was opening this home, because I really focused on trying to get the home. I was like, you know what? If I build it and make it look pretty, they're going to come, right? If you don't have the right team, your home is not going to get filled. This is where you really want to spend most of your time, even before you even bother trying to get a home or do all that. You want to build a key team together, because ultimately you don't want to advocate you guys being the administrator or the manager, right? You want this to be as passive as possible. So you really hire the people that know this and how to do this, right? So who is part of our team? It takes a lot of people to run an assisted living home. Now you guys are probably looking at this and just like, oh geez, where the hell do I start? Well, the good thing is you really only need one person. And that one person right here for us, it's Annalisa, but it's our licensed facility manager or your administrator. Okay. They come and, they're basically, typically they're individuals that were initially caregivers, but they went on to get their assisted living license to understand the ins and outs. And it's just amazing. These people are like the backbone for your homes, right? They not only do the day-to-day stuff, they handle licensing and documentation with the state. They hire and train caregivers and are responsible for making sure their shifts are filled or whatever, right? Not only that, they also are the first contact that family members have. So when they come to tour, these individuals are often giving tours for the place. And really, when you find the right one, they can help you get started with your first home. In what sense? Because especially ones that have been in the industry, they know where the trends are. They know, hey, buy a house on the east side of town. Don't buy it on the west side. We've seen, this is the need that we're looking for in assisted living. So the right facility manager or administrator can really, really help you get your first operations off the ground. So where are you going to find them? Simple. You look on LinkedIn, Facebook groups, Indeed. And that's where I started. I started vetting people on there, but my issue was I didn't know how to vet them properly. And over time, we had issues with several of these managers because we just didn't know what we were looking for. One of the things that I have in my course is the policies and procedures manual, which an administrator should know how to put together. Okay, this is one of the things that they're taught, which includes all of these detailed policies and whatever procedures that you need to run an assisted living home. So when the state comes and say, hey, show me your book, what they mean is like, this book, is it accurate? Is it up to date? What are the policies for caregiver training? What are the disaster drills that you guys have, right? So you can take this book and actually use it to vet an assisted living manager and say, okay, well, what are your thoughts on this? What would you do for this? And if they're like stuttering or don't have clear answers, then you got to keep looking for someone that can, spit off things and say, okay, no, this is what we should do. This is how I did it. I found out this works better, right? So this is one of the ways to vet these people and figure out, hey, are they going to be the right fit for you, right? So beyond that, let's say you have your home. I really would like you guys to try to leverage your medical expertise. And I don't want you guys to be scared. It doesn't, there's a lot of health technologies out there. There's a lot of companies that will actually do the work of monitoring. There's not much that you necessarily have to be involved in. If you want to be involved in it, you can. I myself, I'm rolling out RPM, which is remote patient monitoring. I've been trying to roll out like cardiac telemetry, want to roll out telemedicine. I like to stay involved. I like to be active in that. We have physician partners that are very passive. They don't want to do any of that, but they're available if there is an issue, right? We have GI individuals. So if there's an issue with a GI tract, a caregiver can call them and say, hey, listen, what would you do? And what this does, paradoxically, it doesn't increase your liability. It actually reduces your liability. Having a physician on staff, caregivers can call and say, okay, well, is this an issue? Do I need to worry about it? Do I need to take them to the ER? And many times what we find is that we can avoid unnecessary ER hospitalizations because just by improving the patient safety, right? You think about all these patients that end up in the hospital, right? They're bedbound at the hospital. They don't get ambulated. They're exposed to like nosocomial infections. They're exposed to, and oftentimes they end up getting worse, and they end up going to a skilled nursing facility. And so like, it's very difficult. And if it was just a simple UTI, you could have just taken care of it over the phone. So there's a lot of different tech that you can use. I'm not advocating for you to be your own primary care physician for these patients. A lot of times these residents have like mobile health doctors that come in, but you can certainly add adjunctive like health technologies to help them live longer, right? And many of these you can actually bill for, right? So RPM you can bill for. I think I have a slide somewhere. So a lot of different techs out there, but RPM is an actual revenue source that you can add, right? And it's simple things. It's stuff that we do in our homes anyway. Every day these people get their vital signs taken. But you add RPM to that, you have a third party administer these services. Now you can generate extra revenue that's billed towards Medicare, so you're not costing these residents any. For the family members, it's great marketing because now it's like, hey, listen, we're keeping a closer eye on dad or mom and dad. You know, this is what's going on. You know, we can detect anomalies, we can detect arrhythmias, you know, before they even happen. So there's a lot more things. Just to give you an example, if we were to do it in our homes, and like I said, right now we're still trying to roll it out in our homes. But if we were to do it in only 60% of our homes, that's another $100,000 in revenue that we can generate for our homes, you know. Finally, what about growth and acquisitions, right? So what are the steps that you're going to take to do proper due diligence before purchasing an existing RAL in business? And one of the webinars, our last webinar, was actually really dealing about that, understanding valuation of RALs. I always invite a guest speaker that's experienced in this. But one of the ways is BRRRR strategy is a phenomenal strategy, right? If you guys are familiar with that, with buying, renovating, and getting it off the ground, running it. Now, when you run it as an RAL. But then when you refinance, you can refinance both the real estate and the business component. With just that strategy, you know, my first refinance, I was able to utilize a portion of that money towards the renovations and acquisition of these two homes. Then I did a second refinance a couple of years later. I ended up purchasing this property. Now, this one's interesting because we don't actually run it as an assisted living. I'm just a landlord, and you know, another set of individuals actually run it, right? This cash flow is $2,500 a month after all expenses. It's guaranteed payments, that there's zero vacancy because, you know, and they do a phenomenal job running as an assisted living. So $2,500 from one single property, right? So a good cash flow rule of thumb is if you have units, $100 a door, generally what they say, right? So you would need to have at least 25 units or 25 doors just to match the cash flow of just one of these properties. And this is me being completely passive, hands off, doing absolutely nothing for the property. So, you know, we've grown in our portfolio, and we're not just in one segment or luxury segment. We try to accept, you know, residents across the board. We've grown geographically as well, so that we can try to accept people in all different areas. And so, and we've done a phenomenal job. I think the caregivers, they're just fantastic. You walk into the homes, and by the way, always an open door invite for you guys, if you guys are ever in Phoenix or Scottsdale, to come by and visit our homes. But really, it makes a lot of change in the community. And that's my little boy there with one of our phenomenal caregivers and assistant managers. But, you know, that's the crux of what I'm trying to tell you there is there's a lot going on, but you can distill it down. You know, the main point to take away is that it took me over 2 years to understand how to do the first one. But after that, we did the next two within 6 months, right? And then the following year, we did 3, 4, and it kept growing from there. So Jordan, I'll stop there for a second before I talk about the course or anything, but just to catch up and maybe
Yeah, I think that's good. And we have a few questions that came in. So yeah, we'll kind of jump into that portion. Then maybe we can, what time is it? Yeah, maybe we'll do like 10 minutes for Q&A, and then we can have you talk a little bit about that.
yeah, absolutely.
So Charvel had the question that I was going to bring up as well. So I think with real estate in general, everyone's always concerned about liability. This is obviously a type of real estate investing where you're more involved, or you have maybe people who are more prone to accidents and things like that. So can you talk about liability? And then Charvel, feel free to just chime in if you had specific questions when it comes to liability.
Yeah, so liability is, I mean, you got to look at it like, so people passing, first of all, is not unusual. These are assisted living residents that are in their 80s and 90s. You know, some of them end up being on hospice, so they're passing. So the liability that we're more worried about is like, okay, what if they have a fall or break their hip and stuff like that, right? And this is why a lot of these tech, and I didn't, you know, there's a lot of safety techs that we can enroll into their homes. So things like pads that you can put or like on the floor. So as soon as they're foot touches the floor, a pad alarm will go off. The fact that it's an assisted living home also reduces the liability because it's smaller, it's more personalized care. And that the caregiver to staff ratios are much smaller. So contrast that to, say, a larger assisted living facilities where that ratio may be 1 to 10, sometimes 1 to 15 at night. For us, it's 1 to 5. Okay, so it's much smaller, these houses. So someone needs help, they have call buttons that they can get a hold of someone right away that can come in and check on them, right? So that's one of the ways. The other ways is just being transparent with family members, right? This is what we're always taught in medicine. If there's something that goes wrong, like own up to it, right? There's times that we've had issues too where things go wrong or like someone drops the ball on something, but we own up to it. And that really reduces liability too, because they understand what the company culture is. They understand that we're trying to do the best for the residents. Third is just looking at legal liability, right? What's the simplest way to protect your assets is to put it into LLCs. So you have two components in this business. You have a real estate component and you have a business component. So you want to separate those entities. You don't want to clump them together, but you want to have the business in its own LLC and you want to have the real estate in its own LLC. And really what's going to happen is the business is paying a lease. It's going to create basically a lease agreement to lease the property from the real estate. Now, it doesn't matter if the owners are the same, like you own both or whatever, it doesn't matter. But those are other ways to reduce the liability. So,
That is super helpful. And we have a couple more questions. Have CONs, this is from Sujan, have CONs affected any of your properties?
Has CONs, I'm sorry, has what?
Yeah, CONs. And Sujan, maybe you can join in. Certificate of need. There you go.
Oh, okay, so what's the question? Have they what now?
Have certificate of needs affected any of your projects, any of your properties?
So are you talking about when you're trying to get licensed originally or trying to get your permits in the way?
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know if
yeah, I mean, like I said,
operating.
Yeah. Well, generally the process is like this, and so you're going to go through the city first, right, to see if it's zoned. You're going to go through the building codes. Let's say you now have a property that's zoned and it's good for assisted living. Then you're going to go to the state licensing board. So that might be the Department of Health. In Arizona, it's the Department of Health Services. In California, it's the Department of Social Services. So every state, it's a little bit different. But then you're going to then go through the licensing process to turn it into an assisted living. So the state is always going to say, okay, defer to the city first to make sure you can get what's the maximum number of residents that you can get. And then after that, you're going to go through the licensing with the state once they've got that approval. Once they got the sign off from the city saying, okay, this is good, the building looks good, the fire safety codes are in place, then you're going to turn it over to the state and go through that.
Okay, that's helpful to see spelled out. I'm going to get to a question from Chris. Charvel just had a quick follow-up to the liability question. Did you get a lawyer for your initial contracts, like to help you draw them up and things like that?
Yeah, I did, yes. And I'll be honest, a lot of it, what I've learned is that they just have boilerplate templates that they copy and paste. But if you're doing this for the first time, I think you absolutely should. You want to especially if you have partners involved, you can get an operating agreement together. You can get basically a whole package, right? They can create the LLCs, they can create the OPACs for you. They can make sure that it's structured correctly to reduce your liability. You may also want to get your accountant involved so you can figure out what's the best tax structuring, the way to make it most tax advantageous. Generally we try to make our business side an S corporation. There's a lot, I don't want to get into this, but huge tax advantages. Every time you have an expense, you can write it off, right? Even if you're growing your business, these are all amortizations, they call it on the business side, or business deductions that you can make that you can write off against that. real estate has its own advantages, but you want to make sure that they're structured correctly and that there's no intermingling. So definitely, the first thing, it's small pennies compared to anything that should happen. Nowadays, we don't do that. We just honestly, we just copy and paste what we have from before and just update the names. And that's all we do at this point. But at least for the first one or two, or if you're getting partners involved, definitely you should do that.
All right, perfect. And then the last question we'll get from Chris, and then we'll have the last 5 minutes. Maybe you can talk about how you're educating people on this. How many caregivers do you have per home? And are they not LPNs or RNs?
No, so the caregivers, you can become a caregiver with just a simple course. I mean, they just need to know CPR. You don't need LPNs, you don't need RNs or any of that, okay? So the caregiver ratio that we have in our homes, and actually, it's actually set by, there's really a lot of states actually don't have a minimum requirement, which is interesting to note. But what the guidelines will say is that you need to have the minimum number of caregivers that can safely take care of all the residents that are there. So we typically do a 1 to 5 if all the residents are a certain level, right? There's levels of care. It's like level 1, 2, and 3. So if they're 1 and 2, then we can get away with 1 to 5. If someone's level 3, what that means is they actually need more assistance. They probably need a 2-person assist. So if they need 2-person assist and you're pulling both your caregivers to assist them, that means you really have no one else to take care of the others. So that's why these residents end up costing a little bit more in terms of what they pay, because you will probably need to hire an extra caregiver. So typically a lot of our homes, especially the ones with 10 bedrooms, we have 3 caregivers on during the day, and we'll typically have 1 awake at night. That's typically how we do it. If it's a smaller home, or if our ratio, and I know I said 1 to 5 and that ratio doesn't make sense. It's simply because we may have other residents that need extra help. So that's why we hire an extra 3rd caregiver to make sure that they have the assistance that they need. 2 could be showering someone, 1 could be in the main common area making food or whatever. But typically they'll handle all the needs for the resident for that day, which includes bathing, eating, cooking, meal prep, all of that stuff, laundry, simple housekeeping, stuff like that.
All right. And I know I said that would be the last one, but Charvel had another great question.
Have you ever had
have you ever had to evict for non-payment of rents?
Yes. So the way you protect yourself, and it's unfortunate, but it does happen, right? So, but it's very rare. I will say that. Okay. But typically the reason if there's an eviction, it's really not for, mostly it's not for non-payment. It's really because their needs have actually outgrown the homes and they don't want to leave, or they've become an issue or basically a hindrance to the other residents. And a lot of times it's because of memory care issues or Alzheimer's, or they're becoming combative or aggressive or, agitated. So, they become unsafe, not just for themselves, but for other members that are there. So that's typically what happens. And then, the conflict arises is because you have to try to tell the family and convince them, hey, listen, they can't live here anymore. They're not safe. They need to be, in a memory care facility. And the family may end up getting upset because they end up liking your homes and they don't understand why, mom or dad can't stay there anymore. So that's typically where that comes. But the way to protect that is, and then I'll talk about this, is that we have basically every resident that comes into your home has a lease agreement between the business side and them as a resident. And really it's to protect their rights, but it also is to protect you as the owner operator from cases like that. Should they stop paying or whatever, should they stop, you can find them a house that might take an assisted living waiver program. That kind of income is really not gonna get your bills paid or cover your operations. If you were to do that, there's plenty of homes that can accept those things. So, if it comes to that, you'll probably have to find another home for them in that sense. But that's typically where we see the issue with trying to get people out of there. But you're protected through the lease agreement.
Okay, great. And then maybe the last few minutes, you could talk a little bit about the MD Senior Living Academy.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, over the years, I've had numerous doctors come out to me and ask, like, hey, how can we open our own homes? And my answer at that time was always like, well, I don't really know how to do it where you're at. But when I started looking into licensing and trying to understand, I realized a lot of it was very similar. These steps that I told you about, that's a lot of the steps right there, like, to across the board. The minutia is when it comes to actual licensing, there's little, every state has different requirements. So even down to the building codes, things like what's the minimum square footage for a bedroom? How many people can be in a shared bedroom? How many people can you have with the number of bathrooms, or how many more bathrooms do you need if you have 10 people? So there's all this little minutia, but for the most part, the grand scheme of things is pretty much same and similar across the board. And what I wanted to do was basically teach people how to do this. And this is how I felt when I started, right? Like, I had no clue. I didn't know what resources were available. I was trying to Google everything, between patients, and then calling my GC and being like, well, I think we should put a ramp here. I think we should put grab bars there. Because I was hiring people who hadn't done this. So there was a lot of steps that I learned. But like I said, within a couple of years, we've learned a process, and now I'm basically preaching what we practice, is how I look at it. It's because, the experience that I've built is really based on the cumulative knowledge and experience of multiple people in this industry. I think froze. So managers, like analysts, like talking to people in the health services licensing division, other physicians that are doing this, caregivers, contractors, administrators, other owners. Also, I've gotten a lot of information from placement referral specialists, like their referral agents. And this is another great place for you guys to start too, is referral services, because you could ask them, hey, I live here in this town. What part of town are you seeing the most need for assisted living? And you can really hone down and start there, and from the people that are on the ground. But senior housing expert, attorneys, blah blah blah. So all of this I've kind of distilled into my course over 5 modules. So one of our other partners, Dr. Renat, that she had basically zero real estate experience a couple of years ago, but now she's become one of our partners. She routinely helps us with acquisitions and vetting deals, as well as talking with investors. But basically the background of the course follows what I basically talking about introduction to assisted living and what are the ways that you can get into it. If you don't understand real estate, there's a lot of lingo and terminology that you're going to have to learn, which I kind of go over in depth, because you want to understand how to talk to other sellers. You want to figure out what's the best way. What are cap rates? By the way, you can still find phenomenal deals. If you understand cap rates, you can find deals that are double-digit cap rates, right? So, Jordan, what would you say the average cap rate is for a multifamily at this time?
Probably I'd still say 6 or 7. What would you say?
That's pretty good. In LA, you can't find anything more than 5, right? It's typically 4 or under. But with assisted living, you can still find double digit. In fact, those 3 homes as a group, as a portfolio, we're buying them at a 12 cap, right? So which means the value is much higher for what you're getting. So you're getting basically more bang for the buck is the way to look at it. So module 2 is all about real estate. I kind of gave you some simple examples, but there's a lot more to understand, the financing strategies. This is a great niche because there's multiple ways to finance an assisted living home, right? It starts as a residential. You can start it as a residential finance. You can get commercial, you can get SBA. Many sellers if they're selling it, will do seller financing. So there's multiple ways to actually acquire assisted living homes, right? So not just understanding, but looking at the actual renovation budgets, or what the actual due diligence process is. In module 3, I really dive into how to get your operations team. And I'm going to tell you this again, I can't emphasize this enough. This is probably going to be the most important thing. If there's one takeaway, is to understand how to find the right team because they will help you do everything else, right? You don't just want to have a home that's that you're worried about or trying to manage. You want to be a passive owner. You want to be a passive investor in your own company. And that's what I really want to teach you how to do. And that really begins with hiring the right people and how to vet them properly. You know, if you choose to do this, I strongly encourage you to use your medical expertise. Don't be afraid of that. Like I said, I think it will really reduce your own liability within these homes. And really, honestly, it sets your home apart. You know, just think about it, right? If you were trying to place your mom or dad and one had physician ownership and oversight and one was just, you know, mom and pop operator, it's a no-brainer. You're gonna choose a home that has physician oversight because you understand what that means and what it takes to do that, right? Finally, I have a bunch of case studies, talk about like, you know, how you get involved, how you can start. You know, I talk about case studies about the BRRRR strategies and debt, how we grew our portfolio. There's some homes that we don't own, but we're just managers for. There's other homes that, like I said, you know, we're just landlords for. But a lot of times I'll show you exactly how to start a home from scratch and just get that going, or how to buy one that's in existence, you know. The resources that come with the course include all the guides, which are all supplemental material. A lot of stuff. I don't want to bore you guys with all the details in there, but the 50 state licensing is excellent because basically it just breaks it down for you. No matter what state you're in, what are they going to look for? And had I known this existed, like, it would have saved me so much trouble. I could have gotten licensed within a year, you know. But looking at Texas, so Texas is great because you can actually put 16 people into a home. Now, if you have an average size home, I would definitely not tell you to do that. But if you're really serious about this, you know, a great way to do it in Texas is to build or really renovate a home so that you can maximize those number of bedrooms, at least make it 8 or 10 bedrooms. Some can be shared, some can be private, and you can maximize that revenue out there. They're one of the few states that allow that many. I think Iowa is another state that allows that as well. You know, policies and procedure manual basically goes through admission stuff, health service plans, your residence rights, proper licensing and documentation. You can use this to vet your administrator. And this is the resident agreement that I was talking about, what the grievance policy is, termination policies, medication plans, dietary policies. So a lot of this stuff is just stuff that's you can pay for and get. You can hire people to get, but honestly, it will cost you money. Like the only person you really should be hiring is the attorney as an extra cost. But everything else, my goal was to try to include in the course. You know, every month we do a live webinar. We include experts from the senior housing industry, whether it be financing lenders or brokers or assisted living managers. You know, whatever it may be, we talk about different concepts, the current state of assisted living, and ways that people can get their first home, you know. Beyond that, I really want to kickstart you guys. I really want you guys to succeed. I would love to have our ultimate goal. My ultimate personal goal is to have you guys have homes that we can all share ideas across. You can, you know, I'm not talking like a franchise or anything. I'm just talking about sharing ideas, best practices, and we can all motivate each other to do better in this industry. And I can tell you, you know, when we started, there are a lot of homes were just humdrum, and now they've understood what it takes to elevate their homes. And, you know, we're seeing a positive change in the industry, right? 10 years ago, you say care home, and a lot of people are like, oh, those kind of facilities. But really, you know, we can set a new bar and a new standard for these homes in your own communities, right? So there's also a pro forma in there, which you guys can use. I've actually pre-filled it with our average expenses, and I update it from time to time based on our actual costs. So you can get an idea of like, hey, listen, if this home in your area is generating this much, this is what you can expect. This is what you could actually net over time, you know, first year, second year, third year, and beyond. And I'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to easily do it. So this entire course, you know, it's $34.99, but I'm offering a promo code with Jordan's permission here. So we're doing, since it was Valentine's, Love 360. You can get 360 off the Prestige package. So the Prestige includes all of those, the licensing guide, the workbooks, the online course. And by the way, you have access to this forever, so indefinitely. So it says a 12-month, but I'm just going to keep going a little bit with that. So I enjoy doing this. I enjoy listening to these stories. I enjoy like helping people on their journey. So now if you just wanted the course and the workbooks, it's a little bit cheaper, but honestly, for a few hundred more, I think it's worth that little bit extra. But, you know, I really feel you have the tools. One of the things that I did promise to talk about is this current economic environment about getting started, right? Personally, if it wasn't for those 3 homes, we would actually be sitting out on the sideline. And the reason that we're getting those homes is because we have an investor bringing 1031 capital. If they hadn't been doing that, we honestly would be sitting out for the next 4 to 6 months to see how things shake up. This is, we're noticing that this is definitely turning from a seller's market into a buyer's market. A year ago, people were just asking crazy valuations for RALs. Whatever they wanted, there would be some out-of-town investor willing to plop down big money. We're seeing a gradual shift, and we think within 6 to 12 months, we'll find much better deals. So our strategy as our company, as we're growing, is, hey, we got these 3, that's fine. We're going to hold on to them, but we're going to sit out for a little bit. Now, I tell you the same thing, but when I say sit out, I don't mean just sit on your ass and, 6 months is going to pass. So you can decide what you can do within those 6 months, right? You can get your team together, start vetting deals, start looking into this and start understanding and becoming knowledgeable, so that when you really feel like maybe there's a good time to invest, then you have that knowledge and you will have that confidence to do it yourself. And I think that would be a great time. It's hard to say what's going to happen with interest rates. No one has a crystal ball, but I really feel that we're on this probably close to the bottom. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of what we've been seeing here as well. And so these past few months, just with our, regular, residential multifamilies that we have, we've kind of just been like stabilizing them more and just sort of enjoying the cash flow and then, kind of waiting to see how things shake out and are expecting that it's going to be a buyer's market as well and kind of getting ready for that.
Yeah, I think, we're going to have some phenomenal deals later this year, as well as going into 2024. So there's no reason to rush into it. But again, like I said, that time is going to pass. It's just, what are you going to do with that time? And are you going to be ready to spring forward when you decide to, right? So if you find a deal now that works and pencils out, then hey, go for it. I think that's the way to do it. But you can grow your portfolio. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't realize this, but I became financially independent last year, and I wasn't even thinking about it. That was not even my goal when I started all this. I just thought I would still be doing cardiology, which I still am. But, now it's such a huge burden off my plate that to be able to have discovered that, hey, it only took me 4 years. I could have done it sooner had I known the steps, because I essentially wasted the first 2 years with my first home trying to figure out all the ins and outs of licensing and renovations and yada yada. But anyway, would that be worth it for you guys? You guys have to ask yourself that. So let's get that sign. The course, by the way, guys, don't ever feel like you have to worry about it. I just offer full money back guarantee. Just tell me why you can't finish it, or you don't like it, or it's not for everyone. I understand that. So I don't want you guys to feel cornered into feeling like you have to do it. We have a couple of doctors that I'm helping out. We have multiple doctors that are actually doing this right now. I've gone through the course and are actually looking for active deals. And by the way, I also want to create like a consortium of physicians. There's a lot of physicians that want to work with one another or want to partner with someone that lives in a different state and want to do it. So I'm trying to connect doctors together. So if you guys want to work with someone, so Jack, is down in San Diego, you want to have a home in San Diego, great place to have an RAL. Let me tell you that, the average assisted living home there starts at $8,500. In Northern California, for Raj, he was looking at homes that are charging $12,000 to $14,000 a month, right? And so granted, they're nice homes, but just amazing what kind of rates that they're getting. But albeit, real estate is expensive, and that's why the corollary is there, right? That's why assisted living costs are so much higher there. But anyway, any questions, guys? Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I think, just out of respect for everyone's time, we'll kind of end. But what's a good way for them to reach you? I left the link to your course, which has a lot of just general information as well for people. What's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, so if you guys want to contact me via email, my direct email is sendhilk@mdseniorliving.com. Feel free to shoot me an email if you want to chat too. I'm always happy to jump on a call. Jordan, I just want to make sure, let me take a look. I could put it in. Okay, good. You do have that link there, but I'll put my email in here too.
Perfect.
Guys, if you want to check out our main site, which is the operational page, that's just mdseniorliving.com. You can take a look and kind of understand our philosophy, how, look at the homes there. If you're ever in Phoenix or Scottsdale, let me know. Happy to show you guys those homes there. We have a phenomenal team. And so we'll do our best to accommodate you, take you around and show you on the ground what it looks like.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Sendhil.
Thank you, guys. If there's no other questions, thank you so much for having us, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll be in touch soon.
Awesome. Take care, guys.